All right. So, had a little bit of technical difficulty there, guys. So, we got it all straightened out. We're good to go. Everybody, welcome. Give people a few minutes to jump in here. What do we got going on here? Make sure. All right. Looks like everything is working. Good evening, Jeff. Good to see you, sir. What's up, Blame Tag? Looks like we're not broadcasting to Facebook for some reason. Maybe it's because Watch His Face lost a gazillion dollars today. Maybe we got cut off. I don't know. So, all right. Tonight we have Allison and Asia with us. They worked for a place that sells men's clothing, otherwise known for sake of this video, the Testosterone Wearhouse. So, Allison and Asia, say hello.
Hello.
All right. So, what I'll do is I'll start with you, Allison. Now, first of all, did you two work in the same location, or were they different ones?
Briefly, we did work in the same location, but mostly we did not.
Got you.
From my memory.
But
am I right?
No, that's right. I started at a different place, and I only went to the other store as necessary. I went to a bunch of other stores.
Right. All right. So, Allison, so tell us what got you there, what you did like about it, and then I guess you guys kind of share a story, and you guys can go into that.
Okay. What got me there? Like how I ended up there? Well, I started working for After Hours Formal Wear, and they were bought by Men's Wearhouse. So it was a merger, so to speak. That was an interesting transition because we had been bought by other department stores, like May's department store, and we'd had other acquisitions in the past, but none of them affected business until Men's Wearhouse bought After Hours, and they changed everything, the computer system, the phone system. They changed the tags on the garment. Everything changed, which was a positive change at the time. And I really enjoyed working there during that time.
Now, you did make a comment. I just want to get this out of the way. It changed after the founder passed away, correct?
That is true. That was in 2013. Well, no, the founder didn't pass away. He was fired by the board.
Oh, so
he was ousted. He's still alive.
Wow, he got ditched from his own company by the board.
Which is very rare in history for that to happen. You might remember a certain Apple CEO that was also ousted by his company.
That is correct. Now, because he was, a pretty big face for the company because he did all the commercials, correct?
Right. He was the I Guarantee It guy.
Wow, that's really kind of amazing that actually transpired that way, to be honest with you. I was totally unaware that
it is. And
go ahead.
He has a tell-all book that he just came out with at the end of 2021 called I Guarantee It.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. It's worth a read.
I have to check that out. So, in your time there, what would you say was like the driving force in everything changing? I mean, from like the C-suite corporate level, I mean, did you guys get any kind of support from HR with what you guys were going through at all? Or did it just become, we didn't care?
Well, when After Hours was bought by Men's Wearhouse, that was in like 2006, I think.
Mm-hmm.
2006, we didn't see any real big changes, I believe, until 2007, which was right before like the great short thing that happened where the stock market dropped and we had that recession. So things were really good then, though. The merger was amazing. The Men's Wearhouse treated After Hours employees very well, and George Zimmer generally treated his employees very well. So that was all a positive. the recession hit us pretty hard, and there were like a year or two where we didn't get raises, but we came out of that decently enough because Men's Wearhouse and George Zimmer had no debt. So it was pretty easy for us comparatively compared to other retail companies to get through that recession. And then when George Zimmer was ousted in 2013, it was because the bigwigs of the company wanted a raise. They wanted more money, and the only way to really do that, or at least the way they proposed to the board, was to do it on the backs of the frontline workers, which was to cut payroll and cut bonuses.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that was the biggest change I think that we saw at that time, other than George Zimmer had a huge following. Asia might remember he came to the holiday parties.
Mm-hmm.
We all got to meet him and dance with him if we wanted to.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
That's
I'm sorry.
That's
I'll let
extremely
you
cool.
talk.
That's extremely cool that he was, what I would say, that active in the workforce. I mean, the fact that he would come to these, soirees or whatnot and mingle with you guys is great, actually. And I've only seen one CEO, from any of the companies that I've worked for actually do that. And it is extremely impressive when you witness that the first time. Asia, how did you get there?
So I was in college. I actually started working at Men's Wear. It was called After Hours when I was hired as well. And I was in college, and I kid you not, $25 in my bank account. And I was like, I have to get a job somewhere. So I applied, and I got a job at After Hours. But shortly after I was hired, it was acquired by Men's Wearhouse and became MW Tux shortly after I started working there. So I didn't really have the after hour experience that Allison was talking about. But I was there during the transition where everything started changing. So like the logos changed, all the clothes changed, our standard operating procedures changed, everything top to bottom changed. And I just started working there in 2000. I'm my freshman year of college, so 2006 or 7. And I stayed there for like 4 years. But yeah, I mean, initially I thought everything was great about the company. I liked working there because we were right across the parking lot from David's Bridal, so you basically were involved in people's weddings from beginning to end, and I just thought that was cool to do.
Wow. So now, in speaking with you two, did you guys encounter the same problems like when you were both working in the same store? Was that what the kind of discussion that you guys had that night?
I don't think that we encountered the same problems in the same store, because I had an issue, particularly like with sexual harassment and nepotism and some other issues with like my pay and all that with stores, like my main store. But the stores I work with in Allison, I really didn't have any issues. I mean, besides like her district manager.
So your problems did not happen until you were actually, bought by Men's Wearhouse, correct?
I would have to say most of the issues didn't happen until after Men's Wearhouse bought After Hours.
Right. Go ahead.
Well, they changed the leadership as well. We got into the new district manager, and they restructured basically our whole company. So we became a Men's Wearhouse store instead of an After Hours store. So we had a new district manager, and all of that leadership changed, and we had to get used to it, which was honestly, it was like having a brand new job, but in the same exact location. And I'm sure a lot of retail workers can relate to that.
Yes. All right. So, Asia, I want to start with you. So, the sexual harassment, the nepotism and whatnot, if you would be so kind to go into what had happened to you at the location you were at.
Right. So my main store, there were really no men there. But there was a bigger store, like not too far. Let's say like it was like less than 5 miles away. So it was a big store. And they needed more help. And so I was sent to work at that store because it wasn't very far. And so that's when it started getting a little strange because it was just all men there, and I would basically be the only woman that worked there. And I mean, I will say to be a woman that works at Men's Warehouse kind of works in your favor because sometimes the men that come in there they don't know they want to like get a suit for a date or they want to get a suit for a wedding or whatever special event, and they'll come ask me. Even though like when you worked at Men's Warehouse, I worked in the rental part, the wedding rental part, and so I would just sit in my little corner of the store because they had a special carved out place for us to sit when we did just the rentals. But it didn't matter if I did the rentals or not. If a guy wanted a suit and he wanted a woman's opinion, they would come see me because usually I was the only person in the store who was a woman. But I had I want to say there were three managers there, and I only really had an issue with one of them. And he would just, I mean, he could have been my grandfather's age. I think he was easily 60, and I was at the time maybe 19 or 20. And he would just say these comments, and looking back on them, they're a lot creepier than what I realized when I was young. And I was, I knew them to be creepy then. But I distinctly remember like one time, I think we weren't that busy, so maybe I was like eating some crackers or something. And while we were waiting for anybody to show up in the store, and maybe I had like a crumb or something on the side of my mouth, and instead, most normal people would just be like, "Hey, you got something on your face, just wipe it off, whatever." Not this guy, no, no. He like stuck his tongue out and he like licked his entire lips, and it was very strange. He was like, but he did this with like this sultry like look in his eyes, and he was like staring at me while he did it, and it was just very strange. I know. Um, and then he would do some other things like we were talking about giving kudos to each other. Like people do high fives if they get like a big sale, like if you do like $1,000 package, or if you sell like a big wedding or whatever. So we were talking about how we all give kudos to each other, and he was talking about football players and how they pat each other on the butt after a good play. And he was like, I could do that to you. And I was, why would that even cross your mind
Wow.
to say that to me? So that was like one of the final straws. And I actually happened to be in a human resources class in college at the same time. And so I talked to my professor about that. And I was like, hey, there's this manager. And he wasn't just a regular employee. He was like an assistant manager who's at my job. He just says all these things to me. Another thing was I had this shirt, and I'm a growing person, I'm a growing adult, and so like I don't know what happened. Maybe I bent down or I did something. I picked something heavy up, and my shirt ripped. But I had a camisole on under it, and we have tailors in the back. And so I took the shirt off to get the tailors to repair it because obviously I can't walk around with a giant hole in the back of my
Right.
shirt. And so I had to come back out to get like a jacket. And his eyes followed me from the back door to where the jackets were, because basically I had this like low cut shirt on, so I could go, because I had to get my shirt repaired, so I had to go get a jacket. So I had no choice but to walk out to put something on. And I think he watched me the entire night. It was so creepy. It was so weird. But I had the HR teacher, and I asked him about it. I was like, this doesn't seem right to me. And he told me from that day on to keep a record of everything that he ever said to me. And like he said, put the dates and everything. So that's what I started doing in my computer when I was in school.
And when did it ever reach a point where you had to either, confront this person's supervisor or go to HR?
Well, so he had a manager, our main manager over him, and that thing with the crackers, like the thing where he licked his lips and looked at me, I was like, that was too much. I was like, that's too far. So then I talked to our manager. I said, listen, you have got to talk to him because this is out of control. Like I talked to my dad and I talked to my professor. I was like, this is out of control. So I told him you talk to him because I think he had a daughter that was like a little bit older than me. So I'm like, that's so like
That's very
gross.
gross.
It makes my skin crawl. Um, and so I was like, you need to talk to him, and I'm not going to come back to work until you talk to him. And I said, do not ever schedule me at the same time that he's scheduled, because it was just too much. And I think, and every woman that I encountered that had to deal with him had a similar story. Like there was not a woman in the company who had ever met this man who did not have an issue with him sexually harassing them. So no woman wanted to work with him.
Wow. But you know what? You said something I want to give you huge props for. The fact that you said, I'm not coming back to work until you handle it.
Yeah.
I
So they did handle it. I will give them that. They did handle it, but it was, I mean, I had to say something. It wasn't like he was on the slide with it or anything. He would be very bold in his comments to me.
that is, you know, it's, especially when you talk about like how old you were and how, I mean, it is creepy, but you know, even it wouldn't matter if you were like a year younger. It's just uncalled for, you know, it's, I don't understand why people behave that way. I never will. It is beyond me why people feel empowered to treat a member of the opposite sex that way. I mean, it's humiliating for one thing, and it just now you were talking about nepotism that you had going on there too.
Right. I don't know if it still exists because I haven't worked in the company in a while, but I mean, there was a ton of nepotism because I think my district manager, his son or something worked in one of the stores, and what we couldn't do, the son could do. So like they have like basically blackout dates during the spring because wedding season and prom season. And so I had a big this is actually why I wound up quitting that job because I had two conflicting scheduling events, but they had blackout season, and one was both of them were for school, and they didn't want me to do both of them. They said I had to pick one or the other, and I was like, well, that's not going to work for me because I need to do both.
Yeah,
Because
it was to graduate, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. One was an agreement that the school had made that we would go work a major sporting event for in another state. It wasn't like it was like a far drive. It was like a 2-hour drive, but nonetheless, the school had made an agreement that we would go like a large part of our university would go work this sporting event in exchange for like credit and also for experience because obviously I'm trying to graduate college and get a good job. And so and another thing was like spring break. But if like your dorms closed, where are you going to stay? So I can't come to work. So they was like you can take spring break or you can work the sporting event. And I'm like, well, this is not an either or thing because I'm only in this town to go to school. I do work here, but I'm only existing in the city to go to the school. So I'm not going to be able to pick either one. So we had a disagreement about
So
that.
they literally were trying to make you choose one or the other.
Yes, that was.
Oh, that's some
yes,
bullshit.
that was the argument that I was having. Yeah, that's how I wound up not having a job anymore because I just picked both.
Very
But
unsupportive.
yeah, but like say I wanted to do spring break, right? Like every college kid does. They were like, no, but if my district manager's son wanted to do it, no problem, approved. Um, Also, the manager for the store I was sent to, his wife was also an employee in that store, but she only worked one day a
Wait a
week.
minute. So the
The
district
rest,
manager's wife was working in one of his stores?
no, no, not the district manager's wife, the store manager for the other store that I was sent to with the
Right.
creepy guy. His wife worked in our
Oh,
store.
whoa.
Yeah, his wife worked in the store, but she only worked one day a week. Um, And then what else is I think a couple of district managers' wives do work in stores.
But
So
see,
Oh, yeah.
if that goes on, that's awful. That should never, ever, ever happen.
Oh, it did a
Really?
lot though.
it's a lot of nepotism. Yeah, I mean you can't throw a rock without hitting somebody's
Oh my
relative.
God.
There was a store. That's exactly true. Yes, absolutely. There was a store, not mine, but near mine, that had a guy working there, or it was a girl working there with her ex-husband and her current husband in the same
Whoa,
store.
wait a minute. You
Oh, the
what-
drama. The drama
no,
was nuts.
you mean to tell me that an ex and a current were both in the same store?
Oh yeah.
How the hell does
And
that
it's
happen?
not like they got along.
Wow.
Yeah, and they had kids together. Like they all had kids together. You know, they were all she was the common denominator, being the mom of all the kids.
Well, she had kids with both.
Yeah.
Holy God, that would have to be
you could have like a group
that would have to
meeting.
be a nightmare to work in that store. Oh my God.
Well, if you got to pick the kids up, I mean, somebody can go get the kids. I know exactly where you are. You can't say that you're not at work. I know where you are.
They scheduled. I guess they could just make their own schedule then too around the kids. I don't know, because the current husband was the current store manager.
No, wait a minute. The current husband was the store manager. What was the ex-husband?
Yeah, he was like a sales guy.
The ex was working for the current husband.
Correct. Oh yeah, he definitely got the short end of
wow,
the stick.
That's like must-see TV.
It was. I mean, thankfully I don't do drama, but it was an entertainment. It was entertaining to watch from a distance. They always were. The district managers and the regionals were all like, "I don't know why we have such high turnover in that store," and I'm like, "Go be a fly on the wall for a day."
Oh my God!
Like I hear stories coming out of there from customers would come to my store because we were nearby. And come to my store and be like, yeah, we walked in there and they're all fighting. We can't even shop there.
Allison, you officially win the award for the craziest retail story I've ever heard, because I've been in this.
Oh, do I? Have
okay.
more?
We can go down that road, but I have never. The fact that an ex-husband was working for the current husband, that is something that I've never come across or could even comprehend that it actually happens. Wow. So that's nuts. So Allison, tell us a little bit about what you had to go through.
Well, I worked there for 15 years, so I have quite a list, but I think one of the first things that I noticed happening, one of the reasons Asia brought up a good point was that this manager of hers, was so bold about what he was saying to her, and he was obviously very comfortable being that grotesque, and that is because the culture itself of the company promotes behavior that way, like that. I believe that testosterone Wearhouse is an old boys club, and
for sure.
From the bigwigs on down, they bred their own culture, and that was their culture because they had no process that I could determine for sexual harassment. And I have tons of examples of that.
We'll go through them all.
They had, you're sure. One of the ones that happened early on, right after we were bought by Men's Wearhouse, I had an employee that was new, well, fairly new. He was brought in right around the time that I took the store over. So I was a store manager, and he was brought in as an AM. And so I didn't hire him, but he did work directly under me, and he would harass. The staff of that store was mostly college people. The pay was really low. I mean, since 2006, I don't think they ever paid more than $7.50 an hour for anybody walking in the door. Even to when I left in 2020.
Wow.
To be fair, I was paid $8 an hour, but that's because I got hired during spring season.
Oh yeah,
but the next year they brought me back. They lowered my pay.
What?
Oh, they'll do that too.
So,
well, I mean, I think it was a miscommunication, but again, as a young person, like, you don't really know how to fight for your rights and all that. So they did lower my pay.
So let me ask, I know there's a lot of sales involved. Was there any kind of commission at all? Or was it just you're making $7.50 an hour tough?
There was. It depended on your position, and it depended on what type of store you were in. There are two types of, well, not anymore, but at the time there were two types of stores at Men's Wearhouse, and one was just a tuxedo rental store where they didn't have a lot of retail to sell. And then there were like the bigger full-size stores that did everything. They had an on-site tailor, and they had the rental and a full retail selection. So if you were in, I don't know, Asia, you'll know. Did you get commission in the tux department?
I think because I work basically at the tux rental store like 95% of the time.
Okay.
I think that the store had to hit a certain number. So like say the goal was 5,000 for the month. That's pretty low. But let's just say it's 5,000 for the month. If the store hit a number, people got a bonus. Like we got a bonus at the register immediately. But when you worked at the bigger store, I know the salespeople work. They got a base pay plus commission, but then like the people, like the associates who were not labeled as salespeople, they got a percentage of what the salespeople sold. So like maybe like 3%, something like that. So it wasn't like a lot, but for literally no effort, it was great.
If you had a good sales team.
Okay.
Yeah, if you had a good sales team, yeah.
In the store I worked in, commission equaled to about an extra $1 an hour.
Oh, wow.
On average over the course of a year. So during prom season, when it was really busy, or during the holidays or whatever, you'd get a higher commission. During those times, you might end up with $2 extra an hour. But during the slow season, which was the middle of summer, you might end up with 25 or 50 cents an hour, because your commission, the sales drops, your commission drops.
Now, did they do like a commission versus draw? Like, was the commission like, did you get like a weekly commission, or was it for the month?
It was every week. Well, it was every.
So it was every pay period. All right, got you.
Yeah. At some point, they switched us from weekly pay to every other week. I don't remember when that was, but it was per pay period.
Gotcha.
There's a question in the chat. Do you want me to
Which
answer
one?
that?
Oh, yeah. Yes, Asia, there is a chat. Said, so Allison was a manager before the merger. Do you feel you would have been promoted to a store manager after the merger as a woman over other men?
That's an interesting question. Possibly. And that's another thing I wanted to get to. I think I probably would have. My performance was always pretty high. So I think I would have, especially in the store I was in. The store I was in wasn't like one of the higher dollar stores. Wasn't one of the busiest stores. They generally picked men for the real busy stores. Mine was kind of a middle of the road.
Why do you think that is?
Busyness. I think there was this weird dynamic that if you were a guy and you smoked, you'd go out with the guys and smoke. And those are the guys that got promoted. I don't know how else to explain that. It sounds like
more of the good old boys club, basically.
Yeah, and if you were a woman that got promoted, it was because you were seen. And
go ahead and say, I know where you're going.
If you are a woman that got promoted to something higher than if you got promoted to a large store, or if you got promoted to maybe a training manager or anything above that, you were probably seen rubbing the shoulders of a district manager or regional manager in public, in front of the other managers at a manager's meeting. You were probably very physically close and maybe otherwise physically involved with the people above
now
you.
Do you think that, I mean, obviously in your case, I mean, you kind of got absorbed in, but do you think that was more of a buying silence, or the person that's doing the rubbing and whatnot working their way up?
Well, I wasn't about to do any of that. I didn't do politics. I'm not about that. I'm not going to sleep with somebody for a position. And I have no proof that anybody did, but I know it happened. Like I know all of those people were involved. And you'd go to like a manager's meeting, or like we'd have these company-wide managers meetings in like Houston and Vegas.
Oh, that's a recipe
California,
for disaster.
with these big meetings. And these people would be like literally sitting in each other's laps and stuff, and they're married, they have significant others at home. And that's just, it was that, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas kind of mentality. So I didn't do any of that, but I also never progressed past the store that I was in. I believe I would never have been considered for anything beyond what I was, a regular store manager. In your
time there, what would you say the ratio was, male to female in the stores?
Oh,
as far as, I'm going strictly by, employment.
I'm trying to think. I mean, there were definitely females in positions that, like, there was. Oh, I don't think I ever saw a male in the head of a tuxedo department. It was always a
Because
girl.
because to
Those
me,
are female.
for the harassment and the sexism and things to go on, look, I am as fashion blind as they come. All right. It would make more sense to me from a business standpoint to have, women who understand fashion in that position. And it would be really shocking to me.
Yeah.
I just, honestly, I know it's called Men's Warehouse, but I think it'd be more beneficial to have more fashion conscious people, regardless of how anybody identifies in that business. Is that
Right. Well, and everybody seems to have their own idea of who they'd like to be helped by. Asia said she came from a store that was
right?
pretty much all female, right?
It was mostly women in my store.
And see that,
It's
and
like
that
we
makes
got one or
So
perfect
two guys
sense to
later.
me. I mean, I would think that would be the way to go.
but I've had plenty of men come in and ask me who can measure them for a suit, and they don't want me to measure them. I'm a girl. They're usually really old school guys. Like, these are older guys that are used to a man being a man's fitting a man. They're not comfortable with a woman measuring them or fitting them. And they believe that men, like, their history is that men worked in men's stores.
Right.
So I've been told that. It's not real common, to be honest. Typically, guys will listen to a girl, but we had some of the best salespeople I had were guys. So it kind of just depends on who you click with. There really are all kinds of customers, so that's really hard to say. I tried to keep a balance in my store because I really felt like that was important. If the customer feels more comfortable working with a certain type of person, whether they be older or younger or, you know, male or female, it was easier to cater to what they were going to respond better
And
to. So I tried to
and
have
both of you
everybody.
know this because you worked in the business. I mean, selling, not everybody can do it. You know, I mean
That's true.
True.
that is an a skill, and really and truly, coming from a sales background, working at Guitar Center, it's something that you either have or you don't. You can't really teach it, and you're right. I mean, sometimes it comes down to the dynamic. You just find that person that can sell ice to Eskimos, as they say, and you roll with
Hmm.
it. And I've seen people sell stuff. I'm like, how did they do that? Because you wouldn't think that they could. And it was always told to me that selling is the transference of enthusiasm. And
Yeah.
from that standpoint, yeah, I mean, it really, I don't think you can put a gender on that, obviously, because if you're a good salesperson, you're a good salesperson, and you were probably born with that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
One of my best salespeople was 18 years old, a really shy young girl from college who had never had a job before. She'd sell circles around everybody. It was amazing. So, yeah, you're right about the enthusiasm. She just dove in and tackled it, and she was great.
Would you agree with this statement? Older guys think of tailors versus seamstress, barber versus beauty parlor, etc.
Yeah, I mean, Men's Warehouse called all of the people who did sewing tailors. So in that world, they were all tailors.
Gotcha.
But probably, I don't know. I'm on the fence on that one because I was steeped in this for so long that we just always called it a tailor
That would make sense, though.
or barber versus beauty parlor. I don't know. What do you think, Asia?
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Everybody was called a tailor, so we didn't really do that male female noun thing. Everybody's just the tailor. But I did want to go back to the part where you asked about the balance of the male female salespeople
Yes.
or whatever in the store, because I worked in the tux rental store, and because like I mentioned, like ours was like kind of near the David's bridal. I think that women are raised or kind of brought up to think about their wedding day. And so they have far more of an idea of what they want their wedding day to look like versus most men. So women tend to be in control of even what the men are wearing. Like the men may have like some type of input, but as far as like the color goes, or as far as what kind of cut of the suit it may be, that might be in the woman's mind. And so that may be why there are more women in my store, because the women are coming. They're just bringing their husband. He's kind of like in tow. But they're bringing him. They're kind of like, oh, what do you think about this material? Because he has to wear it. But as far as what it looks like, most suits kind of look the same. It's like the weight of the fabric determines the color of the black or the color of the blue, and so on and so forth. But I would say the women make most of the decisions as far as a wedding is concerned. Even with prom, like the guys would come in with a picture of the dress, and they're like, I need something that matches this. But the thought process is not really as in depth as if a woman came in. And so I think that may be why we have more women in our store, because women talking to women about what they were planning for their big day. I suppose there must be some type of relational aspect. Well, you probably plan on having a wedding one day. You understand I'm gonna have my wedding right now, so we can relate to each other like that, and so this conversation would be easier. So I don't think that there was an imbalance, but in the bigger Men's Wearhouse store, there were definitely more men because there was retail, and so we had like 6 rows of suits and pants. And generally speaking, a man does not want a woman helping him try on pants.
Yeah,
So,
true.
uh, so that might be why there are more men there. But for rentals, the decision making process is different for a rental versus like if I got to wear this suit to a job interview, or versus a date, versus a wedding or a funeral, so on and so forth. So the decision making process is different, and that may be what dictates who works in what store or and where they work.
Well, Asia, I've got to agree with everything you just said, especially about like the weddings and whatnot. Yeah, I think you've got that spot on. I don't think that could have been described
Mm-hmm.
any better. Question in the chat. So going back to the harassment, was most of it from coworkers or were the customers also inappropriate? Uh-oh.
I really didn't have inappropriate customers because despite the fact that I was young, my personality has kind of been the same. It's been consistent throughout my life. So I really I don't want to say I'm aggressive, but I'm stern. So I really didn't have too many issues with that. Also, I would say I was younger. So most people coming to Men's Wearhouse are not 20.
Right.
They're like 30 something years old, maybe 30 to 45. I would say probably the age range for Men's Wearhouse. So that they probably viewed me more as their younger sister. But yeah, the coworkers though, hey, they were just going at it.
Damn.
Free, just doing what they want, just saying what they want to say.
That's true.
Because they see you every day.
Right. Allison, and you?
I definitely dealt with customers being inappropriate more often than employees, but the employees' harassment was far worse as far as gravity. Like customers would come in and say something inappropriate. I can think of one example when I just hired a girl. She'd been there 2 weeks. She was 18. She just got into college, and she was putting a suit in a dressing room for a customer, and he was the father of the groom going to be in a wedding, and this was his suit, and he was doing a final fitting. And so she puts the suit in the dressing room, and our store's busy. We're packed. That dressing room area had a ton of people in it, and I mean the store is full. And he says pretty loudly to where a bunch of people around could hear. He says, "Oh, little lady, you're going to have to help me get dressed." And she was like, "Excuse me?" And she just shrunk. Like I watched her, she was only like 5'2" to begin with. I watched her get down to about 4'5". And I was like, and I walked right up to him and I handed him his suit and I said, "Get out." "Get out. You're not doing that here.
Wow.
You're not trying it on here. I don't care about your final fitting. Go. And what can you do? And so this poor little 18-year-old, this is her first job. She's been here 2 weeks, and this is how she gets talked to. He had cornered her in the dressing room. And that's the kind of thing that I saw happen frequently. For some reason, there's a lot of guys out there that make these comments and they don't think, or they think they're funny. They think it's funny to say little things like, oh, are you going to measure my inseam? Get up there real tight, or make sure you get in there, get the right measurement. And you're like, we don't even measure inseams. They don't even measure. There's no training for measuring an inseam. It doesn't exist. But they think it's funny to make jokes about it. But it's disgusting.
That's awful.
Yeah, that's almost a daily thing there, to be honest. Customers say that sort of thing.
So what was the age
One
limit
of the things
to work there? Yeah.
The minimum? Oh, I don't know.
probably
It
had to be
depended on the
18.
state you were in.
Probably because I was hired when I
18.
was 18. I don't recall ever seeing anybody younger than
You
me.
know,
I think I hired a 17-year-old at some point.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, 16. As long as because at some point you need like some kind of work permit. But
and the reason I ask is because, the fact that, this kind of touches on something we talked about, a couple of days ago, was the fact that you've got these younger people coming to work, and you just said it. I mean, your very first job, and this is what you're exposed to.
And there's zero training for that.
Absolutely.
For
There's
young
no
kids.
training for that. And you just have to sit there and take it and be, it's awful because, you're basically subjecting kids to that mess.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's, like I said, zero training and zero support. When that sort of thing happens and it goes up line, the old boys club, bigwig guys, they don't care. They're like, toughen up, straighten up, suck it up. Gross, what is it? Get some thicker skin. That's what I'm trying. They basically just go, what your complaint is nothing to them. You might as well not complain. It just makes you look weak to them. And so as a store manager, I had a task of every time I hired a young person, male or female, because I watched it happen both ways. Mostly men harassing women, but I would always say and I would say this for any retail worker, you need a statement, because in the moment you never remember what it is what it is to say. You're flushed, you're shocked at what you just heard because you didn't expect to hear it. You don't know what to say. You just kind of want to shrink or run away or hide, or I don't know about you. Everybody has their own fight or flight response. But if you have a statement in your pocket ready to go all the time that you've rehearsed and that you can pull out in a moment's notice and say to the customer, I would like to keep this professional, and if you're not going to, you need to leave.
I think that's excellent. That's the way it should be.
It's really easy to pull that out. I used it weekly.
Now, did you get any blowback from that?
There.
I mean, did you, somebody at some point had to call corporate and complain?
Nope.
Oh, the corporate phone calls. Oh my God.
99% of the time. I'm sorry, Asia, go ahead.
They called corporate for everything. Remember, they would just give them whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. But I never had a customer call corporate on me telling them, do you need to keep this professional or you need to get out? I never had anybody call corporate because I threw them out of the store.
Well, that's good. That's real good.
I think they realized they were misbehaving, and they hopefully realized I was right.
How can you make an argument against that? Like, oh, I was sexually harassing your employee and she threw me out of the store. Like, no way you can tell that story where it doesn't make you look
now
bad.
as far as like your corporate leadership and your DMs around you and whatnot, Allison, what kind of things did you have happen to you that were basically like you just described, oh, you need to toughen up, you need thicker skin, or anything like that?
Yeah. Well, let's see. I'll start with what I had said earlier about this one employee. We'll call him John. No offense to all the Johns out there. I apologize for this.
We love you, John. We love you.
But this guy harassed the young girls in the store. So he was one of those. He was a supervisor in the store, and he was harassing the other young college girls that were under him in position as well as age. And he would say things like, I remember him telling them about how he was a sex addict and what that meant on a more graphic level. And how they came to me and told me, and we're like, oh, this guy has a problem. He's talking to us. Because he's our supervisor, I don't feel like I can tell him to shut up. They were uncomfortable, and he wouldn't stop. And this one particular female employee that worked there had gone to the same high school as him, so she knew him from high school. And he cornered her in a dressing room one night. She was in there cleaning or whatever, and he blocked the doorway and said some really inappropriate things to her. And she was scared. She's stuck in this dressing room. What choices does she have? She can shove him out of the way and get physical, which, based on what she had heard from him directly, he would have just liked it. So she was kind of stuck there. And I got a phone call that night, and she said, please don't ever schedule me with him again. And I was like, what happened? And so she told me the story. So of course I call upline, right? My first call is to my district manager, or above him is the regional manager. That's their structure. And so the question came, okay, well, do you want to talk to HR about this? Like, what do you want the first question was, like, how bad is it? That's what I was asked. Well, how bad was it?
It's a concern. It doesn't matter how bad.
Are there levels of bad?
I've got a toxic piece of crap employee in my store who's harassing these girls, telling them inappropriate things, and using his position to silence them. And you're asking me how bad can it be?
It's not like the hospital where they have that number chart, how, from 0 to 5, how much does it hurt?
Okay.
How much pain are you in? Well, and the crazy thing is, I got the same response from HR. So I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I don't mean to get loud.
Go ahead. Go all in.
Away from the mic.
We good.
So I call HR and I'm like, you need to do something about this guy in my store. I can't have. So all the girls kind of banded together and came to me and said, like, oh, we don't want to work with him anymore. You have to schedule us not with him. Well, that left me working with him basically. And I was like, I mean, I could handle, like, what am I? He's not going to do anything to me. But okay, I can't schedule a reasonable schedule with no one working with him but me. That's not possible. So I'm on the phone with HR and they said, well, tell us how offended you are. And I went, what do you mean? It's not even about me. It's about these poor girls that have to deal with this. First of all, it's destroying the team spirit and it's destroying the atmosphere in my store. I want to kill him myself. Like, I want to take him out back.
So I'll hold up. You
procedure.
You talked to HR,
right?
And they didn't ask about
yes
the victim first. They asked how offended you were.
Well, okay. So the order of that might be a little off. They wanted to know if any of the girls would talk to HR directly. And I said, well, they might, but I'm calling because it's bad and you need to hear it, whether they'll talk or not. Like, I want something done, whether they will talk to you or not. I'm telling you it's happening. Fix this. Can we get rid of him? And they said, well, how offended are you? And I was like, I couldn't hardly answer the question. How offended? On a scale of what? 1 to 10? 3,000.
That's just, face it, we've had numerous discussions about HR trying to protect, companies from lawsuits, but it sounds like that one doesn't even know what they're doing.
Well, I think because it was, this is before #MeToo, and they were always about trying to quiet it, make it go away without a lot of effort, without any lawsuits. It'll be fine. They just kind of soften it as much as they can to make it go away. And I believe that's how they protected their company from lawsuits. Because I went through 3 district managers with that employee, and they would not fire him. They would not freaking fire him. I had a stack of documentation that was almost a ream of paper thick that I had printed off, and we got this new district manager, and we sat down for lunch one day because he was new and I was getting to know him. He was getting to know me. And I said, well, there's this ongoing problem I need you to know about because you're going to be involved with it. It's just pick a day. One of his shifts, he's going to do something, because he was just a problem in general. So I plopped this ream of paper in front of him, all this documentation. He wouldn't even read it. He wouldn't even read it. He looks at it and he goes, well, we're going to have to start from scratch because I'm new to this situation. And he pushed it across the table back at me. And I'm like, this guy is sexually harassing my employees and nobody is doing anything. Yeah, nobody did anything. It wasn't until I got a regional manager involved. It was a guy above him. And I said, I can't work here anymore. I finally said, I can't do this. And I want you to know why. And he came down, and it happened at the same time as this John guy made a mistake. He screwed up somebody's order, and he actually promised the customer. He screwed up the order, and the customer had to go to a different store to pick up the item that she wanted to get it in time because we didn't have it in stock. He promised her that the other store would pay her gas money to drive there. He said, yeah, when you show up, just tell him I said you'd give him the gas money. And so, of course, she shows up at this other store, and they don't know what they don't know what she's talking about. And yeah, this is kind of the type of guy he was. But then he was in front of some other female employees and in front of a former employee and in front of someone else. He said, I have a problem with women in management. I have a problem with women in places of authority. I remember he said, I wasn't there that day, but the other people who worked there told me. He said he didn't like women being ministers. He didn't like women being managers. He didn't like women being presidents or in political spaces. Women had a place, and it wasn't in those. And he said it on the clock, on the job, in front of other female managers. And so they had the guts, thankfully, to talk to HR and explain how uncomfortable they were working with a guy that was uncomfortable with women in management. And so this regional guy came down and fired him the next day. And the reason they weren't even going to let him go then, because it took like one of the heads of the legal department. I remember the person's name. I don't remember their exact title, but they were involved with legal and HR. And they said to me, he said, I have a problem with women in management. There should be no question whether or not we let him go, because the regional guy wasn't even sure if we could let him go after that. And the lady who was working for HR said, if he said I have a problem with Jews in management, or I have a problem with blacks in management, we would fire him immediately. Yep. Why is it that we can't? Because he said women. Get rid of him. And so yeah, the next day he was gone.
Now I do want to say, I've mentioned this before. It is they've done studies and whatnot, and this is in defense of all women that have worked in any kind of business in a managerial position. Look, it's been proven. I mean, women have a better attention to detail. It's the whole women in management thing. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you have a problem with that, then get to stepping,
Well, yeah, you're welcome to go work somewhere else for anybody else. And you having an attitude about it isn't going to change it.
I mean, to me, that's, and the person for legal who stood up, I mean, that is very valid. I mean, you're right. If he would have said any number of different categories, they would have fired him on the spot. And saying that he was uncomfortable with women, basically he was saying a woman in any position of power whatsoever, you need to go, bro.
Yeah. That's basically half the workforce for Men's Wearhouse anyway.
Yeah, really. I think you're probably right. When one of the questions earlier is the ratio of men to women, and it might be about half, but it kind of depends on the position, because there's a big unseen workforce that nobody sees is in the warehouse itself and in production. And, with Men's Wearhouse owns all of their own rental products. So they have their own cleaning system. They have there's a huge, gigantic warehouse for that down in Houston. That's like 3 million square feet or something insane like that.
So
and that's staffed with a whole bunch of people that nobody
Just
ever
curious,
sees.
because I've never shopped at one. Okay, so a Men's Warehouse, do they have like their own line of suits and stuff? Okay,
Yeah, they won't be under a Men's Warehouse name. Like you won't see a suit that has a Men's Warehouse tag on it. You'll see a suit that has their in-house brands, but they're theirs.
are those made overseas by any
And
chance?
almost all of
Aha,
them are brand name
yeah.
or otherwise.
So selling suits for good prices off cheap labor.
Yeah, I mean they had their Joseph Abood line that was custom, that was made in the U.S. because it was custom, and that was made in what, Massachusetts or something. But everything else was overseas.
Right. So what else you got as far as like other things you
Um,
had to go through?
well, some of it, a lot of the rest of my stories have to do with me personally
Now,
experiencing
real
harassment.
quick before we get into that,
Um,
was it harassment from above you, or did you ever have any kind of experience with like employees underneath you trying to do it?
no, I think they know I would have strangled them and thrown them back in this.
Good on you.
They know I would have killed them. No, my employees were awesome. I don't think I could really complain about any of them other than this one guy, John. You know who
Mm-hmm.
you are. No, my employees were always amazing. I'm still friends with a lot of them, and the kind of work family we created there and that little microcosm culture we had in my store was phenomenal. And it's really the only thing I miss.
Right.
Yeah. And I think a lot of retail workers can
Exactly.
relate to that. Because you have people you'll go for, but like the company can suck or the higher ups can suck. But your brothers and sisters on the front lines are cool. But no, I didn't really have anybody from, nah. If I did, I didn't realize it.
So how bad was it from above?
Well, one was kind of lateral, and that's the one I was going to bring up next. There's an intercompany fleet that delivers things to the stores because it's cheaper than shipping. One of the reasons is because they deliver the rentals to, like the tuxedo and suit rentals, to the stores, and they have to do it in a timely fashion. It guarantees they get there. They can run it directly from Men's Warehouse has many regional warehouses that are tuxedo distribution centers. So if you are on the West Coast, there's probably one in California. If you're in the Midwest, I think there's one in Addison, Illinois. If you're in Houston, Texas, there's one in Houston. So they're all over, and these drivers deliver directly. And one of the drivers from that fleet, I happen to know his boss. I was friends with his boss, but he was new to our route, so he had been with the company a while, but my store was new to him, and we're gonna call him Jim. Sorry to all the Jims out there. He walked in the first day and made comments to me that were about my body, and it was uncomfortable. And I said to him that, I have a boyfriend and I'm, it's not interested. I didn't straight up say he was gross, but I let him know this was not welcome. And then he left and I went, okay, we're good. And I thought, boy, if he ever said any of those things to my younger female staff, I would, I'm kind of protective. We have that work family thing. I'd have to kill him.
Oh,
Not
fully
literally.
understand.
Like, I realize
you're doing a whole lot of
on here.
I know, right?
He will. Karma will get him. But I would bow back and we'd have at least a conversation.
Don't go out back.
I'm protective of those.
Oh, he just disappeared. We don't know what happened to him.
He went.
Right. He just.
We sent him to the farm.
I don't know why his truck's out front.
Yeah, it's so strange. 18-wheeler just outside. That reminds me, though, if I may, I also had a driver do something similar to me, but that was like when I first started working. He actually picked me up I remember this, like, because I was like a much smaller person. I'm not fat, just so we're
Oh,
clear.
gotcha.
But,
No shame here.
but yeah, I was like maybe like 140 or something. And I remember he picked me up. Like, I don't know, like he's like, like you do like like a baby sometimes. You're like, baby's probably like 10 pounds. You like pick up something like, it's probably like 15 pounds. I don't know. He's like weighing me or something. I don't. It's very strange. But he did pick me up because he's a bigger guy. Probably. I would say if not high 200s, he passed 300. And he picked me up, and then like every time he would come deliver suits to our store, he always had something to say to me, basically about like how he wanted to go out on a date and whatever. And just be very clear, I'm very gay, and so that was a snowball's chance in hell to ever be happening. So I just, but that jogged my memory that I had a driver who was also like was a little untoward
I mean,
towards
just
me.
picked you up. I mean, what kind of thought? What kind
Yeah,
of
he
thought
did.
process goes? I'm gonna go pick this girl up.
I don't know.
That is
That's weird.
strange.
And I didn't have the store that Allison had where they backed me up to people to not do things like that. I mean, my coworkers thought it was funny. And they just were like, I mean, it's like they were like kind of chiding me, like, oh, he thinks you're cute. He likes you and whatever. But like, I didn't tell, now I'm more open about it, but like, I didn't tell them that I didn't date men back then because that wasn't any of their business. So to me, it's like super uncomfortable. But to them, it's like, oh, it's like when people tell little girls like the boy on the playground is picking on you because he likes you, similar to that situation.
Yeah, he's pulling your hair because he
Yeah, but
likes you.
still, you just don't
Yeah.
walk up to somebody and just pick them the fuck up.
Listen, I was surprised when it happened. I don't know. What do you do to that? Because somebody just picks you
Well,
up. Like, what do you do? You gonna kick your little legs in the air? What am I gonna do? I'm 5'5".
well, at least he didn't throw you up in the air like a baby and like catch you. You know.
Yeah,
No
that
one
would have
thinks to
been.
call OSHA for that.
Nobody thinks to throw you and pick you. Like, nobody wees you.
Wow.
What's the age where you don't get thrown in the air and people say
Well,
funny things to
evidently,
you?
there's no age if you got people, random truck drivers picking you up and throwing you up in the air.
Yeah. So let that be known that Men's Warehouse does hire some strong
Wow.
individuals.
Oh yeah, they're hauling all kinds of stuff.
That's
Oh yeah.
hilarious. All right. So, what I'm going to do is we're sitting at an hour 3 right now.
Okay.
This has went
Okay.
by fast. You two
It
have been
did.
entertaining as hell. I'm sorry. I'm probably going to be talking about getting picked up and thrown in the air for the next couple of days. I'm not going to.
I want that for you. I want
Well,
that for
thank
you.
you. I needed that in my life tonight. I really did. That is awesome. I just picture like this big burly truck driver picking up, somebody throwing them up in the air like, Gucci Gucci goo and catching you as you come down. It's weird. That's really
Yeah.
really weird.
Yeah. Make sure you wiggle your feet, and laugh a little
Yeah.
bit.
Even though it's not
Like,
funny at all. At all. And like somebody just said, regardless, you have the right to say I'm not interested in the least. Yep, you sure do.
well, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
That's a good statement to keep in your pocket
yeah,
too.
I mean, I don't understand why, we talk about customers a lot, obviously, on the show. I mean, some of these customers, I mean, they've got like the biggest set of cojones on the face of the planet because I honestly believe some of these folks walk into these stores thinking it's like, a four-walled version of Tinder. Swipe left, swipe
That's
right, pick somebody up,
Yeah, it's like retail workers cease to become human beings
well, and you're right.
to
and
them.
and as far as the harassment thing goes, that falls completely in line with everything that we talk about is, when you're getting harassed like you guys have been harassed, really and truly, there's no other way to describe it other being treated, less than human. You're
Yeah.
Right.
And also when we worked there, Bridezillas was a big TV
oh
show at the
man.
time when I worked there. So that just made it worse. Like you didn't just get it from the men, you were getting like some major attitude from the women because that was like a big thing at the time. I mean, I remember a woman came in and threw her purse at the front counter, and I'm like, what is going on? That's because the people at David's Bridal had made her mad. She brought that energy into my store. And I'm like, me and her husband, I'm measuring him and we're like minding our business. And here she comes throwing stuff. I'm like, what is happening? So yeah, we I was catching it from both ends.
You know, you just gave me a great idea,
Well,
Asia. It would be an awesome episode to talk with a bunch of people that worked in bridal departments.
Mm.
oh yeah.
Ooh,
That yeah, you have stories for
ooh, I
days.
bet that would be a lot of fun. Like, wow.
You'd have some stories, that's
Now,
for sure.
so you do all men's warehouses have a bridal section, or was that just a store that you were in Asia?
No, so our store wasn't connected to the Davis Bridal, but a lot of times you will notice that a men's warehouse is close to a Davis Bridal, and that's because the color schemes are set to
Gotcha.
coordinate. So if a bridesmaid's dress may be cherry at Davis Bridal, then what tends to well, when I worked at what tended to happen was there was also a cherry vest or a cherry bow tie or tie that would coordinate to the dress at Davis Bridal. So that's why the connection was there, I think, on a corporate level, so that they would have an easy way to match the suits. And sometimes the people at Davis Bridal didn't get it right, and they thought we had a color that we really didn't have, and then we would have a whole nother set of issues. But it's similar to how sometimes you'll see like a Walmart and a Home Depot near each other, or a
You
Walmart and a
know,
Lowe's. It's one of
that's
the
a
two.
really good point. You know, it's a complementary kind of thing. And plus, you can,
Hmm.
like you said,
Yeah,
you can scoop up the people that David's bridal pissed off.
right, right.
That's pretty good business actually. So, Allison, what else you got?
Um, well, really, it was about how HR handles the the rest of what I have is about how HR handles harassment complaints. Because with that driver that I experienced the harassment, he came back and said more, and it was worse. And so I called his boss because he was a friend of mine. I said, "Hey, you've got to get this guy in line because he's going to come in here one day and I'm not going to be here, and it's going to be one of my younger girls, and she's going to quit on me because if he says anything like that to her, like he did to me, I wouldn't work here. I wouldn't want to put up with that. Not when I was, you know. So you've got to get your guy under control because I we can't have this here. Can you send somebody else from now on or something?" And he said, "Actually, I've had so many complaints about this guy and my boss won't let me fire him. Can you call my boss and tell him this story?" And I said, "I mean, if that's what I have to do." And that's when I learned that there was really like no real process for this. I called his boss. Now his boss is like the head of transportation for all of Men's Warehouse, the fleet. It's like everybody across the country. His boss is like, "Yeah, okay, tell me what's going on." And I told him what's going on. Now I don't know if anybody out there realizes this, but when you have been harassed, or if you are going through something like you've been abused in some way and you have to tell people about it, telling the story over again makes you relive it in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so telling it to this guy, I realized, oh, this is uncomfortable. I've got to tell this again. This sucks. But I got through it because I'm like, this will be it. I tell this guy, he makes it go away. So we're done. And he said, okay, thank you for telling me. I will handle it. We'll talk soon. I'll let you know what we're going to do. Oh, and the question was always, how offended are you? And what would you like to see happen? And I said, well, I never want him to be able to do this to another human being ever again in his whole life. But I know you don't have any control over that. So just making him go away in whatever that means to you is fine. And so I left it at that. And then I got a call a few hours later from another guy. And this guy was in another state, in another department, who was somehow connected with HR and the fleet management. I don't exactly know his title, but he said, "Hi, I'm the guy before you told me the story, and I really need to hear it from you. What's going on? Because we're looking into what we need to do with him. So I need to know directly from you what happened. I can't hear it through my um I can't hear it through this other guy." And I was like, "You mean I have to repeat this
That's
again?
3 times now.
Because this is now
Yeah.
the third time." I had to repeat that story 5 times. At one point, I was talking to the head of HR himself. I was talking to him, explaining to him what happened. And I said, if I have to repeat this story again, I'm going to escalate this 100-fold because I don't ever want to have to say these words ever again in my life. But why am I having to tell this story 5 times to the head of HR finally? Because you have no system in place for when this happens. I can't be the only person that's ever experienced sexual harassment in Men's Wearhouse.
So you didn't.
And this wasn't even that long ago. We're talking like 6-7 years ago. It's not like way back when.
So there's no, like, obviously, as you stated, there's no process. Okay. Um, there's no, or maybe have they changed since then? You can't just like, there's not like a complaint line or an ethics line or anything like that within.
Oh, there is.
And does that
There
actually
is.
go to a real person?
Yes. And I've used that line 5 other times regarding regarding one of my regional managers, because that was the other problem I had, was with a regional manager that would constantly talk about how women need to be wearing dresses and heels. He would always say things like, "You're lucky to be a woman working at Men's Wearhouse." There would always be these creepy stories about how he would go to other store managers in the area. Like, it never happened to me, but I would always hear, we all talk. So you go to this one other store manager and be in the back room alone with her and be like, I can make your life a lot easier around here if you just, and they'd call me and be like, "You're never going to believe what this guy said to me today." You didn't do it, did you? Like, absolutely not. But he was looking, and he wasn't even careful about it. Like this, he was way too comfortable doing it.
Which means he's got away with it for a very long time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I called HR every single time one of these things happened, where he's saying things to me like, "You're lucky to be a woman working in Men's Wearhouse," and stuff like that. Absolutely, I'm calling HR. I was so done with him because he was constantly making these comments, about how women have their place and blah, blah, blah. And so the process is, when you call this number, they have a hotline where you can stay anonymous or you don't have to. That's up to you. But when you call, they are required to do an investigation, and it goes down the line. So it starts at the VP. So this is the hierarchy. It starts at the VP. They tell the VP, right below him are all the regionals, and then so on. So it goes to the VP. Well, guess who's one of the biggest part of the problems in Men's Wearhouse are those VPs. The one in particular I'm thinking of was probably the worst. And I can tell you that George Zimmer himself had issues with this, where he was himself engaging in women in the company, particularly at the holiday parties and events where managers were, and everybody knew it. You knew what was going to happen at those holiday after parties. They had these after parties. They were usually in a VP's hotel room or George Zimmer's hotel room himself. They were in out at Chaminade, which is a resort in San Jose. The Chaminade is amazing, by the way. This has nothing to do with them as a company. So I do not want anyone to say anything about Chaminade, because they're phenomenal. The people that work there are great. But he had like this, suite there, and everybody knew what was going on in that suite. And you knew it because I knew it. I knew not to show up. Certain people knew not to go. If you wanted to, not be part of that, then you just didn't go. But yeah, there was stories that came out of that stuff those nights were. So the VPs are part of the problem. They're part of the cultural problem. George Zimmer was part of that culture problem. He was great at treating his employees well. I believe part of it was that he had to. He might have truly cared about people. And I really, truly believed in his management style, coming from a servant leadership, putting employees first, even ahead of customers. That is how it should be done. But this guy perpetuated a culture that was absolutely grotesque. And the VPs that are still there in that company today are still living by those principles and operating that company by those principles. And the people in that company are still suffering those consequences.
I have to agree with you, because I've always felt like, not necessarily the VPs, but when you get to the regional VPs, I think you've got some companies out there where your VPs and your actual presidents are actually pretty decent. All right. But you could almost equate most of retail regional VPs with the VPs you're speaking of at Men's Warehouse. They're a stopgap. Nothing makes it past them. It doesn't matter how bad
That's
it
right.
is. It
Yeah.
gets to them, and that information stops. The people that really need to hear what's going on never hear a bit of it. And and that goes back to
Yeah.
something we talked about the other night with Dr. Carbo about how it's really starting to reach a point in these businesses where there's going to have to be an outside entity that handles these kind of situations and complaints, because obviously anything that these companies have in-house isn't doing anybody any good.
Yeah, they only exist to
Correct.
protect themselves.
And it's I just, it's a shame, because I think one of the problems we have in the customer service industry, it really doesn't matter if it's clothing or just regular hard goods retail or whatnot, is that there's no support system really for the boots on the ground. And as a whole, you've got this army of regional vice presidents, DMs, sweeping stuff under the rug, that when you go back and you look at it and you start reliving all these things you've went through, it's no surprise that everybody's quitting everywhere.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely. That's the culture that everybody doesn't want to, the unsupportive, abusive, and toxic culture that exists in
yeah,
retail.
exactly. And we had a comment come through. Can anyone explain to me where it makes any sort of business sense to apply alcohol to a business function? Well, that's a very valid. Very look.
Oh.
I was a quote unquote store director for a fairly large home decor chain, and just like you were talking about, Allison, you got your yearly shindig you have to go to, and ours was
Mhm.
in Texas, and at the Gaylord Texan, and they basically bought a club for a night, and at our dinner events it was open bar, and that comment makes a lot of sense, because
Yes.
there's just some people that act a fool and cause some problems, and it's almost like they provide that because they expect that. You know, to me, if
Yeah.
you're offering that,
Well,
somebody somewhere, it's not necessarily like the higher ups, but people understand that's going on, and it becomes predatory because you're using that.
well, and to address that whole business sense to apply alcohol to a business function, it was a holiday party. So, yes,
Mhm.
it is a business function. But I have to tell you, everybody knew that those after parties, it was way
Oh
more
yeah,
than
it's
alcohol.
the you can't talk about what happens in the champagne room. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Because the champagne is the nicest
right,
part about it.
exactly, and that's amazing, because I've had instances where I get to sit back and watch how people get foolish, and it's like, whoa, because all that stuff eventually down the line, it might not happen in your current career where you're at, but karma's a thing, man. It's going to come get you. And I'm thankful for both of you that especially you, Allison, with what you had to deal with, that you got out. So what made you leave? Was it this kind of lack of support system, or it was just time to go?
Well, part of it was there was a lot of reasons. It was right at the we got furloughed for the when the pandemic started for 2 months, and it didn't matter what part of the country you're in. They furloughed everybody at the same time, and I don't know. I've been told, and maybe someone can help me with this, but I have been told that what they did was illegal, and I was told that today. So I haven't had time to research it, but uh, the final straw was when they brought us back after the furlough at a gigantic pay cut, like like 30-40%. Yeah, because here's an example. If you're making as I don't have a good one. But basically, if you're making $10 an hour, they brought you back at 5.50 or 6.
See,
And no commission, no more commission. They got rid of that. No more bonuses. They got rid of that. You were straight hourly. So you didn't even have that to fall
and
back on.
do you have any
So you got
knowledge
cut
of
plus.
whether or not they took the government loans out for the payroll protection program? That'd be something to look
I
up.
don't. What I do know is that they brought all the managers, like there was a new guy they hired who is he used to work for me. He was one of my sales guys that I hired. And he was in college, and they brought him in as a store manager at another store, and they paid him the same amount as me after I'd been there for 15 years.
Wow. I know
And I don't know if that was a gender pay gap thing or if that was just all the managers are making the same now.
I know the
can't speak
company
to
I
that,
worked
but
for during the pandemic that, I got quote unquote furloughed as well, actually got the government loan, and it was only used to keep their quote unquote ride or die employees employed. Everybody else got laid off. So, yeah. But, it sounds like, testosterone warehouse is pretty appropriate, especially from an upper level, probably getting out of the store level into the DM, regional range. It seems like it's an appropriate title, to be honest with you. And, I'm sorry that you guys had to go through it. I mean, Asia, it sounds like yours sucked, but, Allison, it sounds like yours was, one of those things where you want to start clawing people's eyes out. And I hate that you had to go through that, but you're in a better place now, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I have to tell you one thing about this. I had migraines every 3 to 4 days to where I was seeing a specialist and I was working with doctors to try to figure out why I was getting these migraines. And I was on high blood pressure medication. I'm not even that old, but I was on high blood pressure medication. I was on daily migraine medication, and I had like a migraine pain reliever for when I got them anyway. And even on the meds, I was getting them every 3 to 4 days. And when we got furloughed for those 2 months, do you know I didn't get a single migraine for 2 straight months? And that's when I knew that was a huge sign that it was time to go. So when they offered me almost nothing to come back, I was like, and then they paid what's his name the same amount. I was like, I'm out.
That, it's amazing what leaving the business does for you. It really is. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I've said this numerous times. The only thing I miss really is the money, because my mental frame, mental state is so much more relaxed and better now. It is.
Yeah.
And when you're put in these situations and whatnot, I mean, a lot of people, one of the things, reason, I started this whole thing is people don't really understand how hard the business really is. They considered it, they consider what all of us do low skill, no skill or whatnot. It's a hard job. And, for you folks, if you work in a situation where it's a selling environment, people really, really have no clue how hard that is. That is not easy.
Well, it's also we deal with a lot of life milestones, which people are really connected to. Like, I mean, one thing I've learned over the years that no matter what happens, people will always make space for a milestone. So that's like when a child is born, or that's like Sweet 16, or a quinceañera, or a wedding, or no matter, nothing will stop those. And so a lot of that ties into emotion. And so when like the smallest hitch happens with a person's wedding or a person's prom or debutante ball or whatever, you get the brunt of that, even though it has nothing to do with you. And people don't understand that. And I mean, you can get 4 or 5 people who are just coming at you during the day, just over a simple miscommunication. It's like, what is going on? Because I'm not clear on why you're upset with me, because I'm really just here to sell you a tuxedo. So yeah, I mean, people don't really understand that some people have very small triggers because they've had this idea of something in their mind for so long, and they want it to go perfectly, and then a small hitch throws it off, and now you're getting yelled at for something that you don't even control.
There's a lot, it's a lot of emotion and a lot of
idealism, definitely. And when you're, especially like, to your point, Asia, a lot of what you guys dealt with were special events. And
Mm-hmm.
you both, like Asia, you were talking about how the bride has it visioned how she wants it all to be. you
Mm-hmm.
know that is a next level rage that you get if that goes down. I mean, that's a
That's
whole
true.
lot different than somebody walking in just being mad because you're out of stock of something. Because you made a great point about what they picture these milestones to be attached to their experience, and they'll just effing lose it, and you just got to sit there and take it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Because you have no idea what's
right,
going on.
and none of y'all are paid enough to sit there and take that.
No.
Not at all. So
Now, if I had $1 for every time a girl going to prom for the first time came into the store and put her dress, or a picture, or a swatch, or her dress itself on the counter, and discovered we didn't have the exact shade of pink to match her dress in a bow tie for her boyfriend, how many times that happened where she just broke down into tears right there in the store. Like, we're not therapists,
exactly.
but you're dealing with that.
I mean, what do you say at that point? I mean, you're right. You've got the bad side where you can get yelled at, and then all of a sudden you got people who break down, and you're like, we're not emotionally equipped to handle that. It's not like there's a training
Yeah.
manual when oh, by the way, part of your training program is if somebody starts crying, no. It's just kind of like, my wife will tell you, I'm terrible, with somebody crying. I don't know how to respond. I'm just kind of like, just all the color just drains out of me and I have nothing to say. I'm like, sorry, you know. So
Yeah.
there's no training program for that. And I can imagine prom time and stuff like that. That's got to be rough because that's an important moment to those young people. That's a
It
Yeah.
is
And
up
it's not,
until when it. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
and sometimes it's not just like if it's the girl going to prom or if it's the woman getting married. Sometimes it's the tertiary person as well. So it's the mother
Yes.
of the bride who it's now her wedding too, because she didn't get to have a wedding for whatever
ooh, I bet
reason.
those are the
So
worst
now
to deal with.
she wants to control. Oh man.
There's a
Oh,
lot of those.
I mean, it's basically their wedding. And then one rule we had in our store was that any changes that were made, we had to call either the bride or the groom. And so I remember sometimes like the mother of the bride will come in or the father of the bride will come in, and they don't like the color of whatever, so we have to call. And they're like, why do you need to call the groom? Well, it's his wedding too, so we need to talk to him to see if this is okay. And they would just get such an attitude. I'm like, well, it's the bride and the groom. It is not the mother of the bride, the father of the bride, father of the groom, mother of the groom. It's the two people's wedding. I don't know who you are. You could just be making up a name. These two people are the people I am working for. And so it gets really crazy because there's like a power struggle sometimes even between the bride and the mother of the groom. Like I'm just here to sell a tuxedo. What is
Yep.
all this power struggle that you're
Yeah.
arguing with me about?
You're watching a family, you're watching all these different parts like try their best to ruin an important day.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, and most of the employees there are making $7.50 an hour. They're like not
right,
like
exactly.
like you're getting paid for
I have
hours.
homework after this. I have algebra
Right.
test in
Yeah,
the morning. I don't care about what you're
that's the
talking
important
about.
stuff.
One lady, I kid you not, one lady called my boss and said I was trying to ruin her wedding. And I told my boss, if I tried to ruin this lady's wedding, I would just change her entire wedding. I could change everything about that wedding. I could change the tuxedos. I could change the day they delivered. I could change the
Yep.
color, everything. I could change literally everything. She would never know. I was like, I don't care about this lady and her wedding. Like, I'm 19. I don't care about your wedding. I have statistics class in the morning.
Look, you guys, when I'm done here, I'm gonna start making posts. I want people that work at bridal shops. Ooh. I just had a comment in the chat. My first job was dyeing shoes to match wedding and prom. Don't bother explaining texture differences to those people.
Oh my God,
Oh
yeah. The
yeah.
textures make black look different. So people sometimes would get cheap on the suit and they already have a black suit. So I'll just wear that. But then we bring the pictures in and one person has a satin suit, one person has a silk suit, polyester, some other weird blend. So all the blacks are different.
Wow. All right. So
Yeah, people don't
What
think
can you
so
do?
about
we're
that
sitting at an
stuff.
hour and a half. I have one question to ask you both. You ready? Do
Okay.
you miss it?
Ready? No. I do. I have made like Allison said. I have made a lot of good friends from Men's Warehouse. So I will say that the camaraderie was great. The employees, most people I worked with were great, and even today, I still talk to many of them. However, that is a place that I also learned a lot about boundaries, and I learned a lot about what is acceptable and unacceptable from an employer. And so, from that standpoint, I enjoyed the lesson, but I didn't enjoy the path I had to take to learn it. But I for sure, I miss my friends. I live far away from everybody now, but I don't miss the company overall.
Allison, your turn.
Yeah, I have pretty much the same answer. I enjoyed the job itself. I think making people look good with fashion is fun, and you can watch someone walk in that is wearing, jeans and a t-shirt, and you get them in front of the mirror in a suit, and it changes them when they feel good about how they look. And I did really enjoy that. But really right now, all that I truly miss are the work family that I had and the people that work there. The company can go burn in a fire. I don't.
It's going out back. It's going to have a conversation.
Well,
right.
both of you made the perfect statement. It is, it's funny because a lot of these companies try to tell you, oh, we're a family. Well, no, not within the boundaries of the company you are, but you wind up making friends that basically become family, for a lifetime. And if there's one takeaway from the entire industry, at least we got that, and I've made wonderful friends all through the years, the different places I've worked, same with, with y'all. And that really, when you look at it, it's kind of like the only benefit you get out of working in, retail or sales or stuff like that, or the relationships that you get, because everything else, like you said, the company can just burn to the ground. And there
Right.
again, it shows how the workers understand it more than the corporations, because that's a byproduct of being concerned about the people. And, those relationships continue long after you're out of the business, but the business is still standing and they're wondering why they've got turnover. Well, guess what? They've kind of missed the point. So
Culture matters.
does matter. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So
culture matters.
So you two ladies, thank you so much. Now, I might be reaching back out to you again, because I'm dead serious about this bridal thing.
Let's do it.
So
we got
yes.
There are groomzillas too, and we have those.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
so give me a couple weeks. I got some stuff coming up, and we're gonna do this bridal thing. I've made up my mind tonight. We're gonna do it. So I'll be back in touch with you guys. Just to let everybody know, next Wednesday, the year anniversary shindig for the Retail War Zone. We're 1 year old as of Groundhog Day.
Right.
And special surprise for those that don't know that are going to be on the show, Adam Cott will be with us. So we're going to talk about, what our year has been like and where we've been and whatnot. Allison, Asia, thank you so much for being here tonight. It's always a blast doing these kind of things. And, I love having people tell their stories. The Retail War Zone is basically a story-driven machine. So, it is what it is. But like I said, I'm going to be getting with you guys. We're going to do the wedding thing sometime in March. So are both of you good with that? All right.
Yeah.
So
thank you for
not a problem.
That's perfect.
Oh yeah. So we are going to go in March. So get your notes and stuff together, and we're going to do this. All right. All right, everybody. Absolutely. Have a great night, and we will see you next Wednesday.